Hey everybody, welcome once again to the Football Fandemic. We are back here in the 2024 season, really for the first time since games have been played that matter. So we're going to talk about some of those games, some of the news, and a whole lot more here on the Football Fandemic. Thanks for joining us. Brandon, here it is. Me and you. Back to the two who pretty much started the whole thing. I know Blake Faith was in there a little bit before you, but you and I were really the ones who kind of kicked this off. We do miss having Josh Haupt with us. Became an integral part. He's probably going to be watching this. He's not right now, I can see, but he probably will be. Yeah. So we're going to say good things about him. Josh, we miss you, buddy. But we're here to talk a little bit about the 2024 season. We haven't been able to get on yet, and it may be a little more sparse this semester as schedules are hard, right? This semester. See how I even talk in college terms. Most of you out there in the world are not in semesters. You're just in life. But in this fall football season, we're going to try and be on here when we can, and we're here today. And so, as we often, well, first of all, how are things in the land of Brandon Colmark? You are no longer in Texas.
Yeah, land of Brandon Colmark is good. Texas is out, and Wisconsin is in.
Well, look at that. You'd think for a Green Bay fan that would be a move you would never make. Oh wait, yes, you would. From Texas to Wisconsin, he is there now with the team he owns. He can have a little more day-to-day input, right? You and Abigail both go down there, give him an earful.
As people know, we had an issue getting Jordan Love a contract this past offseason.
He had to step in.
I officially moved here, and it was finished within 2 weeks.
So you draw the line. You connect the dots. I don't know.
That's right.
That's awesome. Well, I'm sure Texas was a good time, but it is nice having you back in the Midwest. By the way, our fantasy football team changed names to the Midwest Open. I was kind of bummed because I thought this was the year I could break the better than 0-15 name in half. You'll know why later when we talk about it. Unless we've already talked about it. I think we did, actually, right after the draft. So as you may, if you were on here for that, I did draft all Indianapolis Colts players. Crazy. And with no intention of thinking I was going to win. I just always wanted to do this. And
you still almost beat Josh in week 1.
If I beat anybody this season, that person needs some heavy ridicule.
That's the first time we'll do a fantasy punishment.
That's right, a fantasy. Well, let's get on to some news. What's going on in the world of NFL news this week? Well, we're going to kind of talk about the first couple weeks, anything that might be important to know about, and we're going to start off with at the very first week, minutes before the NFL world started. Fantasy football owners everywhere were saddened to find out that one Christian McCaffrey, what's his middle name? You know?
I'll find out for you right now.
I wanted to say it right there, and I didn't know it. Josh is Johnny on the spot here, going to figure it out. Some of you guys may already know it, but we're going to look it up here, and it is still finding out.
Jackson.
Christian Jackson McCaffrey. Yeah. That is not what I felt like it was going to be, but there you go. Christian Jackson McCaffrey was not playing, and so he is he just out for a while, or is he officially on IR? What's his deal?
I think he's officially on IR. I think they're targeting week 6 for a return.
Okay, so it was the short one with a return in it. Okay.
Yeah. And it's just a temporary outing. Everyone knows he's going to come back, and when he does come back, you better watch out because now
it'd be good to have him on your team at that point.
Yes, and there's a couple other people I feel like fit in that category. I have on my IR.
Who's that?
Minnesota tight end. What's his name?
Yes,
used to be in Detroit.
I know this.
Hayden Christensen.
Hayden Christensen. Wait, not who did you say?
No.
Hayden Christensen is Darth Vader.
Yeah, we got Anakin Skywalker. Let me look it up.
You said it, and I started to agree, and I'm like, wait, that's not right. That is not right.
TJ Hawkinson.
Also, as
It
good
rolls
as
off the tongue the
Darth
same way.
Vader,
Yeah.
Hayden Christensen. So. But
So
yeah.
he's out right now. He's on my injury reserve. I drafted him pretty late because I value that tight end position
Mm-hmm.
because it's really hard to get value there, and I know he has potential, a lot of upside, and he's also been out since week 1.
This is by the way, the first year ever that I did not draft Travis Kelce in our fantasy football
right.
league, and because of that, he dropped all the way down to like round 6 or something, right?
I think it was
He
round
went late.
4. Yeah.
Okay, well that's more normal. That's
Yeah,
fairly normal.
that's a
So,
good tight end spot. But he's
yeah,
also underperformed. So I
he
think
has
the
so
only
far.
dots you can draw is when Matthew has him on his team, he's an all-star.
That's
When
it.
Matthew doesn't, there it is.
Taylor Swift is going to be coming to me saying, Matthew, I need you to help me out here. You need to draft him because he's my beau. That's how she talks,
Right.
I think. Anyway, yeah. So what other big news is going on? We do know some other people have gone out on IR just this week, right? I am obviously aware that DeForest Buckner, which most people are going to be like, that's just a defensive lineman. He's not like a quarterback or, but he's a big deal. And we saw it. We'll talk about it when he's hurt and playing hurt. And when he's not in there, I have a feeling we're just going to keep looking like a very bad run defense. Anyway, we'll come to that a little later.
Maybe not on IR right now, but someone that is missing practice right now is Justin Herbert with the Chargers.
Herbert. I did not know he was missing practice.
Got a ankle sprain, ankle injury somewhere in that area.
Wow. They need him. They need him in there. They're surprisingly 2-0. We're going to talk about the surprisingly part in a moment also, but
before putting the carriage before the horse, we also have someone that returned to practice this week, another quarterback here in Green Bay, Wisconsin, showed up to practice yesterday, was a limited participant, and was wearing a leg sleeve, but that's still a major improvement. And we'll get into the game in a little bit.
And we'll get into like what we think about
everyone
that
in America
timeline.
Watched. Yeah.
Everyone, every single one. Yeah. We also had Tua down in Miami out on IR, right? And that is also for the possible 4-week return. Is that what they're looking? Because it was concussion.
I think so. It is. It's a head injury.
He took off and ran right into that guy and then just fell down and got that kind of straight arm going. And you're like, oh no.
Yeah. Yeah, it's something that Tua is prone to is not protecting himself when he's running. And
he totally ran into that guy with his head.
Yeah, he went head first. I mean, that's all on Tua, 100%. If I'm his quarterback coach, I'm bringing in the professional baseball team next door, slide. And I'm like, this is how you slide. And you won't get hurt.
Definitely needs to learn that. I mean, last year or the last time he got hurt real bad, he was way back in the pocket. He wasn't running, but this one was all running, and he could have totally avoided it with a slide. But he was fighting for a first down, I think. So
I agree.
Any other news? This is where Josh used to always compile the news, and then we could just comment on it. And this is where we missed that because I'm just sitting here trying off the top of my head. What news is in the world? We may come back to something and be like later, like, oh, this is news. But anything else before we move?
What we need people to understand, Matthew, is you and I have our local news covered. If you need information on the Colts, I know Matthew's my guy. You got stuff on the Packers, Brandon's your guy. If you need the rest of the NFL, it's Josh.
Josh is your guy. That's right. Well, let's move to a little thing I wanted to talk about today, and that is which is the most surprising. And I kind of want to hit the two. I mean, we're getting ready to go into week 3, so we've had 2 games so far. Very small sample size, but we've got some teams that are now 2-0. And we got some teams that are 0-2, and then we got a bunch in the middle that are all the 1-1s. And the 1-1s, you can't really say too much about them right now because that could, a game they could have won or could have lost happening there. They're 1-1. But which team that is, let's start 2-0, 2 wins, already this season. Which one is the most surprising of the 2-0 teams? I'm going to read off the ones that are 2-0. What do we got here? Chargers, right? We just talked about. Minnesota Vikings. We haven't
That's
yet
surprising.
talked about. That is surprising. Pittsburgh Steelers with their double-headed, who's a good quarterback kind of situation. We got the Saints down there. Everybody was with what's his name?
With
Derek Carr, right? The Bucks with Baker Mayfield. We got the Seahawks, Geno Smith, right? I'm assuming that's still their quarterback. I didn't watch either of those two games, but Chiefs. I don't think that's too surprising. Texans. I don't think that's terribly surprising. And the Bills, probably not surprising. So I listed off a bunch there. And in my opinion, those last three, not surprising. Texans probably, if you had to be like, mildly surprised that they started off 2-0, they did. Bills and Chiefs, I think all of us are in the groove of thinking they're good teams, and then somewhere they either fall apart or they don't. They win the Super Bowl, and that's that's those teams. But out of those first bunch that I named, Seahawks, Bucks, Saints, Pittsburgh, Minnesota, and Chargers, which is the most surprising?
To me, it's the Vikings. Minnesota going into the season, we all know Kirk Cousins left. Right? He's now a Falcon. And he looked pretty good this past week as a Falcon too. They're one of those 1-1 teams we're going to avoid. But they had this mystery at quarterback. They drafted J.J. McCarthy. That was their guy. We can go into another segment on how are our rookie quarterbacks looking, because the answer is not great. And so J.J. McCarthy was their guy. They're like, wonderful. And I remember watching parts of the combine and watching J.J. McCarthy throw, and I thought he was the most refined thrower in this draft, based on the people that were throwing at the combine. Caleb Williams, not in that group because he didn't throw at the combine.
He did not.
But I have seen him throw in the NFL. Comments for later. And then Caleb Williams is out for the season with, I think, a meniscus issue.
Wait, Caleb Williams?
No. J.J. McCarthy.
I was going to say,
J.J.
that's
McCarthy,
not true.
Yeah, that is not true. J.J. McCarthy out for the season with, I believe, a meniscus. And so they
brought in good old
Samuel
Darnold.
J.
Darnold. I don't know if his middle name starts with a J, but
but here's the beauty about this Shanahan offensive system. If you can understand it at a high level, you can be highly effective.
And you also are thrown to a really great wide receiver.
And you have Justin Jefferson, who just had a 97-yard touchdown last week. It was really impressive.
7 yards. He threw it from in the end zone, didn't he?
He did. And I don't know this stat for sure, but I think that's the longest touchdown of the season.
Yeah, so far.
I don't know that for sure, barring any special teams.
Yeah, before that, when everybody was talking about the good old Indianapolis Colts 60-some yard throw that Alec Pierce brought down, but now we've got a 97, and it's Justin Jefferson.
And I mean, and I want to put into context for Sam Darnold. He is a younger quarterback, although he's been in the league for a long time. The problem is he never developed when he first got to the league.
Oh,
he went to the Jets right away. He was the starter for the Jets and failed miserably. Then I believe he went to Carolina.
I think Carolina was next. Yep.
And Carolina, greatly known for their quarterback development, cut him right away.
Greatly known for how great things are going there.
I think he might have played for one other team before he landed as a backup in San Francisco, working with a Shanahan offense. Where he got time to actually develop and understand how this offense works.
In a place where they don't feel like their quarterback has to be the only piece that does anything, right?
Correct. And having him with that mindset, a little bit of development, understanding the game at a deeper level, and then shipping him off to Minnesota, I think that's the best thing that could have happened for him.
For him, man. Best stars align, and then the dude that they were going to start all year gets hurt. He gets a chance to show. I wasn't just a complete bust. I just had bad coaches and stuff all around me.
And sometimes that's the situation. And we can talk about it with another 2-0 team, the Pittsburgh Steelers, who's been their quarterback these first 2 weeks, Justin Fields. taken by Chicago. I think the 11th overall pick just
Now,
a couple years ago.
What did he start the first game?
Mm-hmm. Russell Wilson's been out.
I remember Russell Wilson was called the starter, and Justin Fields was like, "Man, I did everything I needed to do." And then all of a sudden, Justin Fields starts, and they're 2-0.
Here's the mystery that I don't know, and I learned this from the Pat McAfee show, and this got Pat all riled up, as any topic does.
Yep.
Russell Wilson is on the sideline, fully padded.
Yeah.
If you're injured, as Pittsburgh put out, saying you're injured, we're starting Justin Fields. That was the official news. Why are you fully padded on the sideline? And if you want to go see it, Pat McAfee does a phenomenal job of covering it. You're going to hear a 25-minute rant. He's going to be standing up over his chair and pointing at people. It's phenomenal. But it's a big mystery, because some of it might be Russell Wilson loves the game of football, and he just, even if there's a slight chance of him going in, he wants to go in. And that's an argument for Russell Wilson, and I understand and I respect that, because we want to see our favorite players play. And if your favorite player is Russell Wilson, you want to see him on the field. The Pittsburgh doesn't think he's going to go in. He still suits up, and then Justin Fields goes in. And Justin Fields does okay for the first game. You know, he's still trying to adjust to the Pittsburgh offense, as any quarterback is in week one. It's going to look different 10 weeks from now. And then week 2, he looks just a little bit better. And that's all you need, is looking just a little bit better. And I'm going to come out and argue, if he looks even better than he did last week in week 3, he's going to be the starter for the remainder of the season. Because what he's doing is he's showing the Pittsburgh organization that he can go in and he can improve incrementally week by week. He can say, I'm a younger guy than Russell Wilson. If you give me a longer term contract, because I think he's on a 1-year deal right now.
I think they both are, aren't they?
Yeah. And
just Russell Wilson's is $40 million.
Yeah. I think if I'm Justin Fields, I'm going in, I'm not coming out of this game. And by week 10, I'm going to say, I want a 4-year contract.
By the way, let me clarify. Russell Wilson is a $40 million, that 39 of it is being paid by the Broncos. Mm-hmm. Right. Only like 1.3 is being paid by Pittsburgh, something like that. Yeah. I mean, they have a very low investment in him, and it's awesome to watch. Now he has to be paid that regardless if he plays or not, right?
Mm-hmm. Yes.
And maybe that's why he was dressed. Maybe it's like in the contract, it's like, you know, as long as he's on the active roster, you guys will pay $39 million. I don't know, but
yeah, it's a good point. But going back to our original question, I think Minnesota is my biggest surprise there, and that's why I think they have been, is because of Sam Darnold and his progression over the past 4 years, hopping around with organizations. But my second team is Pittsburgh, and those are my official thoughts on Pittsburgh. As a division as a whole, I'm surprised the NFC South is doing anything with victories. They have 2 teams that are 2-0.
2 of them,
the Saints and the Buccaneers.
Right.
And to me, that's just surprising, because they've just been one-sided for so long, and it's just alternated which team was dominating, right?
Yeah.
We had the Cam Newton era of Carolina. We had the Drew Brees era of the Saints, the Tom Brady era of the Buccaneers, the Matt Ryan era of the Falcons. They've just taken turns dominating. Yeah. And to have 2 of them in the league, at the top of the league right now.
Let's not discount Atlanta. They're 1-1, but they may end up giving a good push as they go down the road, and Kirk Cousins gets more integrated into that offense. And
Kirk Cousins manhandled the Falcons in a 2-minute drill to win the game,
and
manhandled the Eagles, like
right.
And a substantial organization.
The Eagles, who have, they're a tough team. They're a tough team to beat. Now, it's not going to be a man. All 4 of these are good, because you also have the Carolina Panthers there. And they just benched Bryce Young, which as soon as that happened, everybody's like, yeah, why would you have picked this guy in the first place? It's obvious he wasn't NFL ready. And all of the remarks start coming out that we've already heard, but like when he's already benched this early in the season, does not bode well for Bryce Young. Who's their backup? Who came in? It was Andy Dalton, right?
Andy Dalton. Yeah.
Yeah.
And Andy Dalton, he's a well-respected NFL veteran at this
The
point.
Red Rocket.
He drafted by Cincinnati, played very well for Cincinnati, really turned that organization around, and then hopped around in a few different teams. He was in Chicago for a little bit. I think he dressed up for Dallas for a little bit. Started a couple games during Dak's big injury a couple seasons ago. And now he's in Carolina. I mean, he knows the game. He's played the game at a high level. And this goes into my entire issue with NFL organizations and young quarterbacks that we alluded to earlier. Right now, every rookie quarterback that's starting, we have 2 games of them, and I don't know, what's there, 5 of them? So 10 games total?
I'm trying to think of who all 5 are. You have
Caleb Williams.
Caleb Williams is in Bears, right? Okay, yep. Chicago.
We got Bo Nix in Denver.
Bo Nix in Denver, and are they 0-2 or are they 1-1? I think they're 1-1.
They are.
No, they're 2-0.
0-2.
Or 0-2. 0-2. I'm sorry. Yeah, I looked at the wrong list. So they're not doing well either. Now New England
Jaden
has
Daniels.
played.
Jaden Daniels.
Okay, so Jaden Daniels is Washington. He started both. Yep.
Yep. Let me look at rookie QBs.
So New England has started Jacoby Brissett over Drake May. So he's not playing. Trying to think who else is a rookie this year.
Michael Penix, he's on the bench in Atlanta.
Yeah.
JJ McCarthy is injured. All right, so it's just those 3.
Just those 3. We were looking at New England and Vikings as, hey, these all might start, but
they drafted, but they're not playing. So of those 3, which means we have 6 games of data, there's exactly 0 touchdowns out of those quarterbacks, which is concerning because I promise you, Matthew, we're gonna hear this 6 months from now. This is a generational talent that's going to completely change the game of football. We heard that with Caleb Williams. Right? Yeah. We heard that with Trevor Lawrence. We heard it with Joe Burrow. You're going to hear it every year. And just the face is going to change of who's being labeled. And the problem is you're throwing quarterbacks in when all of their experience is only college football, and they don't understand the speed of the NFL, and you're not developing them. You're just telling them good luck.
Yeah.
And that's what's happened.
So you'll always have those that do better than expected. CJ Stroud over Bryce Young, who was number 1, who did horrible, right? So CJ Stroud did okay. And you'll have those who in their first year, they come in and they play and they do okay. But it'll have to remain to be seen. Can he maintain that?
Like Caleb Williams is a perfect example. He's an improviser passer, which means he's really, 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 really good at extending the play and making big completions, right? We saw him do that all throughout college. And he's had attempts of doing that in Chicago. The problem is he's throwing into triple coverage, and every time he's done that, the ball's been intercepted. He's not accounting for how fast these linemen actually are. I mean, they're
faster.
Milliseconds behind him in his speed. And that's not an exaggeration. He might run, I don't know exactly what he runs. I thought it was he never tested. I'm going to assume it's a 4.6, 4.7, pretty average for quarterbacks. Some of these linemen are running 5, 4.9, 5.1. I mean, you got to get that ball out fast, and you can't mess around. And I thought what he did against Houston at the beginning was great. Just get some short completions. They're going to be pressuring you, just like the other people on your team that are super talented do show off their super talents, right?
Right.
And the big headline that's going on right now with Caleb Williams is the stat line. The Bears drafted a punter in the 4th round this year out of Iowa, I think. And he's a really good punter, and I don't want to take that away from him. When he was drafted, Caleb Williams texted him saying, "You're not going to need to punt much this year." And so far, Caleb Williams' total offensive yards compared to total punt yards is less.
Yeah.
And they've had many more successful punts than successful offensive drives.
And then, in their first week, they won without scoring a single offensive touchdown.
Correct. They won what was it, 24-17?
Yeah.
All defense and special teams. And then the NFL came out and said, Caleb Williams is the first rookie quarterback to win a game since, but we know it's not Caleb Williams.
It was not Caleb Williams. Yeah. It was the defense.
Yes. And so it was everything else about that organization. But the idea of sitting a quarterback down and just training them to learn. And Tom Brady came out in an interview recently and talked about this, which is, some people might value it more than others. But when Tom Brady came out and entered the NFL, and when Peyton Manning came out and entered the NFL, and when Aaron Rodgers came out and entered the NFL, when they got in there, they were learning a system of being a quarterback in the NFL. Now, when you're coming into the NFL, they're teaching you fundamentals of how to play quarterback.
Right.
Not, learning how to set your feet properly, learning how to time your pocket presence, learning how to do all of this stuff that they used to teach you in college.
Right.
And so Tom Brady, when he started at Michigan, he used this example. He walked into camp and he was one of, I think it was 9 or maybe 11 quarterbacks. There was a lot of them. And he had to claw and fight his way through his fundamentals to get third string on the team. And then eventually keep building his fundamentals to go and be the starter and then get taken in the NFL draft. And then he repeated that process, but he had his fundamentals down. And now he was learning the Patriot system as he entered in the NFL. So when his time was ready to come, he could hop into the game and go, which is my same argument for Sam Darnold right now. Is he came into the NFL really young. He was another generational talent. Mm-hmm. And he didn't have anyone to teach him the fundamentals of quarterback playing in the NFL until he got to San Francisco, in my opinion. Because that's when Kyle Shanahan, a quarterback and offensive guru, said, all right, you just, sit here. Brock Purdy's going to throw the ball. Let's just work on your footwork. Let's work on your pocket presence. Let's work on your speed of getting the ball out. And then I think you could be successful. So they're not asking you to go, and you learn this later and you can develop into this, but they're not asking you to go throw the ball 60 yards down the field on the first play of the third quarter. Like Anthony Richardson is really good at doing. Right. That's a strength of his. But there's also weaknesses in all of these young quarterbacks that we have. And so maybe now is a good time to get into our game. But when I was watching what the Colts might do for this game, I had no confidence in Anthony Richardson throwing it short or medium. I had every confidence in the world of him throwing it 90 yards because I know he can do that really well.
Right.
And we saw
before we get into that game, I want to hit the other side of the surprise thing. So we talked about who surprised us at 2-0. We'll get into that, and we'll continue about that quarterback conversation because that is a very important part of this game. But the 0-2 teams, I'm going to read those to you. You tell me which is most surprising. So here's the ones I think are less surprising. Panthers, 0-2. Giants, 0-2. Broncos, 0-2. Titans, 0-2. Jags, 0-2. Colts, 0-2. Rams, 0-2. Bengals, 0-2. Ravens. Which of those is the most surprising to you?
To me, it's the Bengals. Having Joe Burrow back, you've put all of this work and money into your overall organization to have a really solid team. To go 0-2 to me is just a gut punch. And I understand the Baltimore argument as well, because they were picked to be the Super Bowl team. So I also understand that argument. But to me, it's the Bengals because you actually have your star right there playing the game. And there's just communication or distrust somewhere on the field that's not allowing them to go out and be as efficient as they know they can be. And the same argument can be said for Baltimore, except
for me, the thing about Baltimore was they added Derrick Henry to Lamar Jackson. And I just felt like, man, it's going to be tough. It's going to be tough. Now, does, Lamar always throw the ball or does he sometimes run more than he should? That's always a question. But I thought they would at least have won one. And for them to be 0-2 was surprising. Bengals probably was my close second. With the Rams being in there, just because I'm like, are the Rams really that bad? I mean, Matthew Stafford.
That's something else we're trying to figure out, right? Because Aaron Donald retired, and that does take a
That's
significant difference on your defense. It does.
yes.
And so not having offensive to offenses to play at 4 blockers for one guy opens up opposing offenses for a lot of stuff.
Right.
Matthew Stafford, I thought he's looked fine. Cooper Cup, another injury that we have, he's out, and I think Puka is also out. So those were his 2 top targets.
And that's
And
the only
I'm not
thing that's
really
kind
sure
of
what they're doing in the
helping.
backfield.
That's the only thing kind of helping explain that right now to me is like,
Yeah.
okay, those 2 top wide receivers are out.
Yeah, I agree. And I put those 3 teams kind of up there in the top. The Bengals, the Ravens, and the Rams. The Rams not as surprising because we can pinpoint stuff, but those AFC teams, it is quite surprising.
Yeah. So I think most of those now. I, being a homer, I thought the Colts might be 1-1 when we got to this point. I think they should have been 1-1, but they obviously have some things to work on. But when people all were telling me, "Oh, the Jags, don't sleep on the Jags," I'm like, I don't know. I think the Jags might have looked like they were going to keep going up, but I feel like they've kind of hit where they're going to be, and people have figured them out. Titans, man, what a trash that Will Levis is. Sorry, everybody.
Yeah.
I had so many people tell me.
Start him again this week. Start him again this week. I need
That's
him.
right. Yeah. I had people telling me, "Oh, you guys should have drafted Will Levis," and I was like, "In no way did I want that." And I think that is just being proven over and over again. But the Broncos with their new Bo Nix, and the Giants just being the Giants, and the Panthers just being the Panthers. None of that surprises me.
I feel bad for the Panthers. If you haven't seen, for anyone that doesn't know, my parents live just north of Charlotte now. And so where the Panthers play. And I was looking up, and they were selling tickets for less than $20 to go to the game.
Man, as a fan, if you're a huge fan, that's great. Except you got to go watch your team lose. So is it really?
So I sent that information to my parents, and they took my brothers down to the game. And
nice.
They had a good time. And
if you like the team they're playing against,
which is the Chargers.
That's like a really cheap game. Like if you're a Chargers fan, you're like, yes. So keep an eye on that.
I think tickets to the Falcons when they go to Bank of America Stadium, and then U.S. Bank Stadium is Minneapolis. I always get those 2 confused, just like Matthew
banks.
and Drew Locks and or Drew Lock and who?
And
Daniel Jones.
Daniel Jones.
Yeah. Bank of America and U.S. Bank are the same to me. It's just like that. And so tickets to the Falcons game, I think, are even cheaper than they were this past week. So you can go get pretty cheap tickets out there.
Nice. Well, see how long that lasts once the Falcons start getting maybe in a little more winning. Panthers, though, it looks like for this. Who's going to be their quarterback now? Who came in?
Andy Dalton.
Oh, yeah, we already talked about that. Andy Dalton. You're right. Okay. Well, now that we've got those surprises of the 2-0 and the 0-2 teams, let's move on to our game. Our 2 teams played each other this week, Colts and Packers, and everybody was unsure what it was going to look like because Jordan Love was out, got hurt in the last 6 seconds of the first week, and was looking to be 3 to 6 weeks. They said it looks like it may end up being around the 3 mark. We're hoping.
It looks like it may be around the 1 week mark. He might play this Sunday.
You think he might play? I think him being back in practice isn't necessarily but he might,
Yeah.
I don't want to rule it out.
The interesting thing there, the news that came out from the NFL was speculative. And so they said, based on this injury, if it was this mild, then it's 3 to 6 weeks. And that's where that information came from. But the news out of Green Bay is Jordan Love's always been day-to-day up until a few hours before the game when they officially said no.
If I'm Matt LaFleur, what I'm doing is I'm going to address him, and I'm going to start Malik Willis and try and use that same game plan as last week. That worked so well, where it's just like run, little pass, run. Oh, even if that's working, I mean, it's the Titans. If that's working, give Jordan Love a good little bit of time to get feeling better, like really solid. But if it's not working against the Titans, then you bring Jordan Love in. But that's tough because, who's getting all those first team reps and You know,
Yeah.
so
Yeah. And Matthew, overall, I thought the game that Packers and Colts had was an overall clean game. I mean, it wasn't overly flashy. It
it
wasn't
was
overly complicated. It was frustrating for both
it
teams at
was a
times.
horrible game. and here's why it was a horrible game.
All right.
As a Colts fan, you're watching week 1 when we lost by 2 points and we let Joe Mixon, that's who's the running back down in Texas with the Texans right now. We made him look like a young superstar again. And I'm like, okay, well, he's not been that bad for that long. Who knows? Maybe this year. What's his name? Your running back, Jones. Not
Josh Jacobs.
Josh Jacobs. He had like 6 yards in the first half last week. He had 200 and I forget how many. It was over 200. Over 200 in the first half this week. It was just very frustrating. And what I'm watching is a Colts defense that does not know how to stop the run. Gus Bradley is having... Now, yes, DeForest Buckner was playing hurt, and he is huge for our run-stopping defense. And it was obvious that he was not 100%, and then he ends up going on IR now because of that, sitting down on the right foot. But unfortunately, I think that means we're going to see lots of teams running against the Colts here for the next 4 weeks hard, and we're going to be frustrated every week. But, yes, the defense kind of stiffened up in the second half, but my goodness, our offense was not able to take advantage, even though we had all this running against us. We held them to 16 points, and we just couldn't get anything going. Anthony Richardson, and you started to point this out, he is not yet able to do the layups, the little passes with consistency. Now, granted, I saw Adonai Mitchell, drop probably 3 or 4 passes that were like right where he needed them. And I'm like, you were like in preseason, you were doing this. You've got to do it now. And then I saw Michael Pittman Jr. catch like 1 catch. It felt like, maybe it was more, but I felt like they were never calling out number 11. It was, Alec Pierce a few times. He's been our number 1 target this year, surprisingly. And I don't know if it's because everybody's like really doubling up and tripling up on MPJ and just saying beat us with the others, because the others are not doing it and Anthony Richardson's not doing it. And they just need to so run defense and lack of a consistent pass catching, that'll kill you every time. So frustrating for me. Because if there was a game we could win, it's one where Jordan Love is not there and you have to depend on Malik Willis. Now, granted, your defense is a good defense, so I'm not taking away from them.
Are you going to use the S word? Scary?
I'm not yet. Not yet, because
I'm not yet. I'm hesitant.
In order for us to do that, we would also have to say the Texans defense is scary, and neither one of them like kept us completely out of it. I mean, what'd we get? 10 points, which was, there were places where we should have scored more points. That was totally self-inflicted. But at the same time, you guys were doing what you had to do to stop us. For me, it's just frustrating because our team did not play how they should have against a team that was like doing what they could without the guy. I think Jordan Love definitely makes your offense stronger. And if we would have been going against Jordan Love, I think it would have been a lot bigger blowout than it was.
Well, put that into perspective. We passed throughout all 4 quarters a total of 14 times.
Yeah, I mean it was. Even some of those passes were trick runs.
Yeah,
a little bitty pass to somebody who then runs. Some of them were swing arounds and stuff that were kind of runs by wide receivers.
Yeah, and if Jordan Love plays, he's throwing the ball down the field 25 times.
Yeah,
it's a very different defensive game plan for any team going against Green Bay.
But here's the thing: we knew he was not playing. Our team should have known we're going to face the run heavy today, and yet we couldn't stop it. Not 1 inch of it in that first half. It was just crazy.
Yeah, and kudos to Matt LaFleur. He disguised, as you mentioned, a number of the runs.
Yeah.
Different back passes in the backfield, confusing the defense. It helps the offense a lot to do that. I don't know if I told you, Matthew, I tailgated for the game. I went to
did you?
Lambeau. I was
Yeah.
outside the stadium. Great atmosphere. Free. I ended up getting free parking because the chip reader didn't work, so they said you can just park there. So
Nice.
I got free parking. Went to the game for $0, and the entire game. My perspective was we haven't sealed this game yet.
Right.
As a fan, you want to seal the game as fast as possible.
Yeah.
And
Even
I've seen
down in the last 2 minutes, it was still something the
it was
Colts could have won.
a 6-point game.
Yeah.
And I know because I've seen Anthony Richardson do this. He has a massive cannon instead of an arm.
And
That's just not even an arm.
It can be one of those crazy big plays that happen real fast.
And I've seen those crazy big plays benefiting me before. You've seen Aaron Rodgers and his Hail Marys. And if there was a guy to do it, it would have been Anthony Richardson. And I'm grateful that the defense was competent enough to pick the ball off rather than swat it down, which is another big difference in our defense. But to me, I did not have peace that entire game until the last interception.
Yeah. And it's one of those things, and I think I said this to somebody, I can't remember who, but the truth is Anthony Richardson needed those reps last year to be in a better place this year. So in my opinion, he's still going through his rookie year. He's just a little bit ahead of, but like 4 games, and he never really finished those games. You look at Jordan Love last year. He started like good, but then he had like a down period in those first 8 games. And then he came back and like he started putting it all together, and those last 8 were great. Anthony Richardson's got to get through that period too, of, hey, I'm still getting up to what it looks like to be against NFL speed and against NFL, tightness of windows and against all this. And he's got to get that consistency in his passing for the layups as well as the bombs.
And we had talked about this last year, Matthew, when Anthony Richardson was ruled out for the season. I said, my hope for him is that he sits down and just understands the game at a deeper level, like the mentality part of it. And I feel like he has a lot of that. You could see it in his passing. He knew where the open receivers were going to be, meaning he was reading the defense. He just lacked the ability, and it wasn't always his fault. You mentioned Mitchell. I think it was a 4th down or a 3rd down. It was a major point in the game. The ball placement was perfect.
Yeah,
he was wide open. There wasn't a guy within 3 or 4 yards of him. He had all he had to do was catch and go down, and he had a 1st down, and he dropped the ball. So that's not on Anthony Richardson. That's not Anthony's fault. That's Mitchell's fault. And kudos to Anthony Richardson for putting in that work while he was injured, because it's going to pay off in the long run. Now you just have to take your mental state and match it with your physical state. If he gets those 2 things humming, the Colts are looking pretty good. But it's just going to take time.
Our defense can get in there, and right now, everybody in Colts Nation, everybody was like super concerned about Gus Bradley as our defensive coordinator, but also with the fact that Chris Ballard said, "I'm good with our guys in the secondary." Are you really? Are you really? And then, our front was supposed to be our strength, and it has not looked like it. Yeah. So our defense is the most worrisome, and then Anthony Richardson getting comfortable. But you're right. I think he's going to grow. I think there's good in his future as long as that defense can also grow.
Yeah, and I was overall happy for you watching the game, Matthew. I didn't think it was a throwaway game. I thought there was lots of valuable information to be learned for a young Colts team.
Yeah, it's just you hate to see 2 games that like both were winnable. Texans the week before, but it was 2 points. We had a chance, just couldn't do it. This one, we were 6 behind. That's a touchdown, but could have been, couldn't seal it. And so you hate to think, okay, how many of these are we going to have this year? Where it's like, oh, we could have.
Now I do have to warn you, if your offense gets humming and it looks like one of the best offenses in the league, and your defense doesn't, welcome to most of my life as a Packers fan.
Yep.
Because I've seen it, because it's really exciting to have a big offensive game, but you never close the game out. You know what I mean? You're having to put up 45 points in the playoffs
just to win.
to win. And you see other organizations like the Patriots dynasty, where the average amount of points you had to put up was 13 to win a game.
Yeah.
I would much rather have to score 2 touchdowns in a game to win than 6.
Yeah, because two's a lot more doable.
Yes.
So let me ask you this. I know the Colts had their problems, at least in my view, and I think you would agree with that. But like, were there still anything that, like, as you watch the game, even though it was against a Colts team that was struggling in some areas, you're like, man, I really loved what I saw from this guy. I feel like there was some of those for the Packers.
Yeah, there was for the Packers. I had mentioned Anthony Richardson. I was big on him. I didn't think Michael Pittman got enough separation in his routes. And granted, he was.
I mean,
on the
Packers players that you're like, man, I loved what I saw in this guy, even
Oh,
though it was against kind of a rough Colts team.
Absolutely. Probably the biggest one I've been mentioning to everyone is our free agent safety signing, Xavier Worthy. And that was just 2 weeks in a row in the first quarter where he's basically set the tone on the defense with an interception. And he's the kind of guy, we signed him to do one thing, and that's to figure out what mistakes the offense is making and take advantage of those mistakes.
Yeah.
And he's proved that for us. And he proved it in New York when he was a Giant as well. So he's number one. And I am all in on Xavier Worthy.
Yeah.
All in. Next guy is Eric Wilson. He's a linebacker, and he's been on the Packers for a couple of years now. He's been a very dependable special teams player. Jeff Hafley came in and he said, I think we kind of have something special in him. Let me try him in a few different positions, live in games. I think he can do well. And he proved it, I think, exceptionally well. He had the second pick of the game. And what he did is he disguised a blitz with the zone coverage, and he dropped back where he knew Anthony Richardson was going to throw and intercepted the ball. And so as a defensive player that's coming up at the end of their rookie contract, you're now with a defensive coordinator that wants to improve you to the maximum level. If I'm the Packers organization, which I am, I'm signing him for at least 2 more years. I'm saying, Eric Wilson, like, you've done fantastic, and we think you have a lot of value here. I want you to be here for another 2 years. Let's work out a deal. And so Xavier Worthy, Eric Wilson, and then the guy that I think we knew would be something we didn't know when he'd do it was Josh Jacobs. And the offensive game plan, run the ball down their throats. Right?
He's gonna have to prove it with some other teams, because right now the Colts are known for giving up a lot of run yards in 2 games. It's a small sample size, but so he didn't get hardly the first week, right? This was his big breakout week, but it was against a Colts defense that's bad against the run so far. So you got to prove it, I think, at least for me. He's got to prove it on a team that is good against the run before I'm like, oh yeah.
And for me with Josh Jacobs, we knew he can play running back really well because he did it with the Raiders for a number of years. He was one of the years he was the NFL's lead rusher. Just a couple of years ago. And so we know he has it in him. We just need to figure out exactly how it works within the offense. And so I'm not overly concerned about being able to run the ball against the Titans either. I view them and the Colts kind of in the same stratosphere, kind of working up to something greater right now.
But don't ever compare us to the Titans. Although right now we're both 0-2.
Yeah. But both teams are working up just the organization right now, and it's kind of the cycle of things you have to go through. And I'm going to name one more offensive player. I was actually really pleased with Tucker Kraft, our tight end. Now, he didn't do anything overly impressive in the passing game, but what he did do is he stood there and he was a capable blocker, and he was helping out, fill gaps where it was needed. He knew where the ball was going to come out, either running or passing, during the game, and he was making sure that those people were protected. And so he moved out of his way to do a really good job blocking as a tight end.
It's one of those unheralded positions you don't get like a lot of talk about, but very important.
Yeah, in my opinion, Mercedes Lewis was the best one to do it as a tight end, the blocking tight end, and he's doing it right now with Chicago, which kind of makes me want to barf. But I still value what he did. And he's the only tight end to make it to age 40 in the NFL. And he's doing it almost as an offensive lineman that can catch the ball. And so those four players for me: two offense, two defense. I'm still up in the air on our kicker. I like him. I like him better than the options we've had in the past. And he's had some opportunities and he's taking them, and he's also had opportunities and missed them. So
Mm-hmm.
I go back and forth. I think there's development that could be done there, and so I'm overall pleased with what he's done so far. I get that he's young,
Kickers are just
and
hard, aren't they?
they are, and you know, Matthew, because we've done this podcast enough where Packers special teams has been the reason we've lost major games, and if we just had a slightly better kicker or a slightly better returner or slightly better tackling, like the Packers are looking historically much better than they do now. It just they were so efficient on offense, they neglected a lot of things. And so, yeah,
Kickers have been a problem for a little while. Hopefully,
yeah,
he can get that like solidified to the point where you don't have to think about it. That's when you know you got a good kicker, when you don't really think about the kicker.
yep, yeah. So those are my thoughts on Packers players. I'm looking forward to watching more.
Yeah. So just real quick, Minnesota's sitting at 2-0. Packers are at 1-1, but I bet you still feel like, nah, we're definitely going to be in that conversation for the.
Yeah, I think the Packers will be in that conversation for the division. I think the Bears are going to take a little bit too long to develop on their offense to be in that conversation. I think it'll be Packers, Vikings, Lions.
Looking like
in
the
that role.
NFC South, like you got the Saints, the Bucks, and the Falcons, and then you got that one team that's like not looking great.
And it's all going to come down to the last few weeks of football. And so the Vikings, I think they can maintain their level. The Packers and Vikings play in a few weeks anyway. I think here at Lambeau. I think it's at Lambeau. And so we'll get to see those two teams. Right now, I'm not freaking out because we're only one game behind first place.
Right.
And so we still have a lot of season left, 15 games, and we're only one game behind. So it's very doable to catch up. It's not like we're week 10, 5 games behind, and we need them to lose all of their games and we need to win all of ours. That's a much more stressful position to be in.
On the other hand, Texans are sitting at 2-0. Colts are sitting at 0-2. And it's not even that they're just 2 games apart, but like the direction of those two teams feel very different to me. With Buckner out, and Blackman was out this last week, and just the defense as a whole not looking like they're getting it. And then the growth that needs to happen. I think we can get better, but I am less inclined to say the Colts are going to get in that division conversation at this point of the season. But right now, it's Texans 2-0, and then 0-2, 0-2, 0-2 of the other 3 teams. So Texans could trip up, Colts could get a few games, but it's got to be proven by that defense and by our only by the defense and the offense. That's all that's got to play better. Special teams are doing okay.
Well, if I'm in the AFC right now, I still view it pretty wide open. I mean, you got 2 of the heavy hitters that you thought were going to be at the top in the Bengals and the Ravens right now at the bottom, tied with the Colts.
The Colts. That's the only thing that gives me hope. It's like they're also 0-2.
Yeah, and so if I'm the Colts, I'm trying to. My first goal is to develop my players to win games, and while I'm doing that, we're pushing them as far as we can to win the games. And depending on how things shake down, I wouldn't be, opposed to seeing the Colts in a biting off a wild card spot, being really close in that conversation, kind of how it's been the past couple of years. But there's a very real possibility that Anthony Richardson takes the similar trajectory Jordan Love did last season.
For me, I don't have a fear about Anthony Richardson not growing. I do believe he will grow with reps. I also believe AD Mitchell will get better with reps as he goes. I think, he's brand new and still getting that figured out. Same with Michael Pittman Jr. I think he will get involved. I don't fear our offense. What I fear, Buckner being out for 4 weeks and our back, our secondary just not being the greatest. They're young, and there was no help given to them in the offseason.
Yep.
Now, granted, I think the Colts tried a few times quietly. I don't think everybody always knew. They tried to get in on some of the guys who were the safeties in the corners that were free agents and just never offered enough. And but because of that, our secondary and right now the beginning, DeForest Buckner is a big deal in our defense.
Yeah.
So that's what scares me.
And Matthew, trust me, I feel your pain because we've talked about this in the past. The Packers and the Colts are in on every conversation for every player all the time.
Mm-hmm.
And our organizations have a certain threshold of risk management.
Yep.
And no, this player, we're not going to give them that. And sometimes it proves to be true. And this player, we are going to give them that. And it can kind of go both ways, right? And so Xavier McKinney coming to Green Bay, we signed him on a big deal. We were very high on him. I guarantee the Colts were in the conversation with him. And, it doesn't happen often with the Packers. It doesn't happen often with the Colts. The Colts made a big move for DeForest Buckner. He used to be a 49er.
Yep.
And that proved out to be fantastic for your organization.
Yeah.
And so I like the way that our organizations are run. I think it's done in a smarter manner because we definitely could just spend all the money for all the high-level players and then be out because you just push all the money into the future and then you're screwed for a decade. That's what I don't want.
And that's always as a fan in the moment, that's more exciting. That was Ryan Grigson when he was our GM. He was like making big deals, free agency was more of a thing. And I remember being really excited, but somehow it never ended up working out on the field. And that's the opposite is often true.
Yeah.
Bill Polian was not a big deal maker, and Chris Ballard's not a big deal maker. They have a value in their mind. They have a limit. And if it gets above that, they're like, it's a good player, but we're not going there.
Fiscally responsible. I think that's our term of the day. Our teams are fiscally responsible.
Yeah.
But the Packers did the same with Ron Wolf, right? He came in, he got Reggie White on, at the time, the largest free agent deal of the time. He traded a first-round pick to the Falcons for their third-string quarterback, Brett Favre. And some of those moves paid out exceptionally well, and they do. And sometimes they just don't. The Carolina Panthers giving everything up for Bryce Young. It did not pay out.
It did not.
And so just understand your level of risk management and you'll be okay.
So we'll see as the season goes on, if the Colts do a little better, if the Packers do well, and we'll talk about that again. I guarantee it.
Yeah.
Let's right now. I don't have a whole lot of time left here on the podcast, but I do want to talk about what games we're looking forward to watching and what games are not that exciting for us. So we used to call this our marquee manure, my oh my. We don't necessarily have to go all three categories, but which one are you excited about? Which ones are you excited about? Which ones are interesting as you look at this? Which ones are you not interested in?
All right. A game I'll probably watch is the Bears Colts. Actually, no. I will not be watching that game because it's on at the same time as the Packers game. But I'll see highlights from that. But what I'm looking for in those games, and something I've really enjoyed doing the past couple of years, is monitoring growth in quarterbacks. And even though Caleb Williams is not a Packer and he's on a team that is my mortal enemy, I still want him to do well as a player and as a quarterback, and I want him to develop. And I know it can be really tough. And I remember watching Justin Fields' first game as a Chicago Bear. He was sacked 9 times.
Yeah.
It was ugly. Against the Browns before their defense was good. It was not pretty. And Caleb Williams, his first game was not pretty. His second game, a little bit better. And we're going to see what this third game brings for him. But that's a game I'm personally invested in just because I want to see how far Caleb can go. And same with Anthony Richardson.
My guess is you're going to see a lot of running against the Colts in that game because they have a pretty good run game, and they've seen it work 2 weeks in a row. So at least to start, I think we're going to see that. And if it gets successful, I think you'll see it a lot. If it doesn't, then I think you'll see them switch up and head more to Caleb.
Hmm. Yeah, and something to note on Caleb, Matthew, if the Bears are down in the game, watch Caleb and how he reacts to that pressure. So far, and I know we only have 2 weeks of data, it's a very small sample size, he's reacted awfully. And he's put his team in a worse position than they should be in. And so if I'm the Colts defense, I'm going to get really aggressive with just trying to put all of the pressure on Caleb Williams and get him to make a mistake. Because
I
that's
would
going to
like to
bode well for
say,
our team.
I would like to say, I think I could give you the same advice with Tennessee. When Will Levis gets pressure, he makes horrible decisions.
Yeah.
And throws it right into interception city. And so,
Yeah. And you know who's going to get that interception? Xavier Worthy.
That's right. That's the one. As far as it's funny that you let like one of the teams you said I'm kind of interested in this game as a Bears game. Same with me. I think this week the Houston Minnesota game is going to be one I want to watch because they're both 2-0. But I want to see where do they really shake out against each other, and I do want to see how C.J. Stroud continues to do in the NFL, even though he's on a team that I consider an enemy. I want to see. So that's going to be one I want to watch.
A game I'd put an asterisk next to and maybe take a few notes out of is the Ravens-Cowboys game.
Man, the Cowboys got beat so bad by, was it the Raiders? Man, I did not expect that.
They pooped the bed. And the Ravens are looking
sure did.
The Ravens are looking to come in and win a game because they're 0-2.
Yeah.
And what better place than Jerry World to show the NFL that you're still a competent team in the NFL.
So I didn't get to watch that game, but was that Gardner Minshew that put it to the Dallas Cowboys? Mm-hmm. You go, Gardner.
You're home boy. You're home boy.
Right.
Another interesting game I'd probably take note of is Eagles Saints. So the Eagles
that's what I was looking at.
Yeah, Eagles are a very good team, and the Saints have proven to be a good team so far this season. And so I think that's going to be a high-powered game. It's going to be similar to Eagles Week 1 without all the slipping, because that was against the Packers. I watched that one.
I think the Colts had that the first week too. Lots of slipping.
Yeah, well, they were on the soccer field in Brazil, so the grass was a bit longer. It's wetter. Yeah, it just was. They were playing with the length of their cleats all night.
All night. Yep.
All night.
I watched that one
too. Another game that would be fun to watch is Lions Cardinals.
Lions Cards. How are the Cardinals doing? In 1-1, I guess, since I didn't talk about them as a 2-0 or an 0-2, they have to be.
Both teams are 1-1. We know what the Lions are. We're big fans of the Lions on this podcast. But last week, the Cardinals came out and demolished, and it wasn't even close. Kyler Murray looked like an MVP candidate.
Boy, he got away from one there and checked it and got a touchdown that I'm like, I thought he was going to be sacked for sure, and then I thought he was going to just throw it away, and then touchdown.
And a really good receiver that's coming up on their team, and I get that he's young. We only have 2 games of data. Marvin Harrison Jr.
Yeah. That guy's going to be good.
He's going to be good. And how do we know that? Because he has a family legacy of doing it.
Yeah. And he's
got a good track record.
He has a college reputation that also agrees with that. And yeah, he's a big guy. It'll be fun to watch him.
Yeah, I think that's going to be a good game because it's going to be, just that combination alone, Kyler Murray and he's a small guy, so we can get out of stuff really quick and easy. Trying to stop that paired with Marvin Harrison Jr. and paired with some other aspects of their running game, I think it's going to look like a good, solid game overall.
So those are some games that we're excited to watch. Real quickly before we go off here, I've got to be off in about 5 minutes or so. Our fantasy league. A couple games into that, right? So real quick, give us the rundown. We know who is in last place. That would be yours truly. Still haven't won a game. I don't anticipate winning a game all season, but I am watching. I did switch my kicker out. I'm setting my best roster of Colts that I can. And
we know who's in first place.
I was just going to say, who's in first place?
Yours truly. So we've got both ends of the league covered. And I was texting about this with a couple people this past week after it came out that I was now first place. Is now I feel like the pressure's on. Like I've won the
Targets on
league.
your back.
I've won the league a number of years. We're week 2 in. I'm one of 2 teams that's undefeated. It's myself and I should know because they're probably my greatest enemy. Myself and Cody, our Falcons fan.
Okay. It's like your greatest enemy. That could be, who could that be? I thought Jacob was going to be your answer.
I think Jacob has lost both games. And we talked about it. Jacob had the first overall pick. He took Christian McCaffrey.
Oh, that hurts.
And Matthew and I talked about this moments before we went live, almost the exact time frame before we found out Christian McCaffrey was injured. And I was only up by Jacob by like 16 points, and he just had Christian McCaffrey left. And we know Christian McCaffrey can easily cover a 16-point spread in fantasy football. That's not a problem. And I had such a feeling of relief seeing that he was not playing for that game, and also seeing that Jacob didn't notice it in time to switch out for a different player.
Yeah, that's the worst.
I mean, that was complete luck on my part. If I didn't have that, I would not be ranked number 1 right now.
You'd be one of those 1-1 teams.
Yeah, I would be. And but that's just how fantasy football in the NFL works. So sometimes you get lucky, sometimes you get unlucky, and sometimes it makes you win or lose. But
so we got some
overall,
people in the middle. You got the bookends right here, and
we've got one more data point to share. So week 1, we talked about Matthew was not ranked 12th. Matthew was actually ranked 11th at the end of week 1.
Really?
And it's because Matthew lost his game, but there was someone that also lost their game that had fewer points.
That's pretty crazy.
And it's our friend Dylan.
Dylan, not basketball. Yeah.
So, Winston Warriors now after his dog.
Oh.
And Dylan came back in week 2 to be the number 1 scoring team. So if you want to mess with Dylan, just know he might be the worst by far. Well, maybe not by far, but really close to Matthew, or he might be just the top scorer of the week.
There you go. All right. Well, I think that's probably going to do it for us today here on the Football Fandemic. And do stick back with us. We're going to be talking about Colts, Packers, possibly Washington from time to time. We're going to be talking about fantasy football and all that is news in the NFL. Thanks for joining us today. See you later.